right?
So I want to move on to after the first wave and the second wave, because obviously that facility went did very well. I want to ask you, did your dad ever contracted COVID? Because we've gone through 4 waves now, five, and now we're at the 6th wave. So I want to ask you, did your dad ever contracted?
Eventually he did. The first year was fine. They did a good job with keeping COVID out of the facility. And again, that's part and parcel with all the protocols they have, I understand. He eventually did contract when in January, this January that just passed, and I myself also got it. There was the Omicron one, so it was the one that was a little bit lighter, right? And unfortunately, it did happen, but he was very mild because of all of the shots he had. It was just a cough. It wasn't anything that required him to go to the hospital. He wasn't hospitalized or anything like that. He eventually did get it. I think at that period of time, everybody was getting it. It was almost like the common cold, more than anything, right?
So I wanna ask you, do you feel any sense of, like, in terms of when the government lifted a lot of the restrictions, and when you were able to visit back your dad, and all of these things and all of the other processes that were put into place, how did you feel about it? Did you feel it was too much? Did you feel it was just right? Or did you feel like...
Well, what happened was they did lift a lot of the restrictions, but then they had only one caregiver per residence, which was hard, because then that puts a lot of pressure on, let's say, me or others. So that would be only I could go visit him. But at that time, I don't understand why, if my brothers were double vaccinated, triple vaccinated, why we would not be able to rotate. Like, what, that was something that I struggled with. Because as much as I wanted to go visit him and I was there often, the pressure was always on one family member to be there all the time. And then they weren't able to see the other family members, which I think was a little bit hard. So who do we know for sure that was regulated by the government, or was it the actual place that did that? I don't know.
Well, that I'm not even going to. You can question it. I question it because there are a lot of inconsistencies. If you ask me, like one place doing this, one place doing that, and all that's always going to spark, questioning. The thing is, I want you to go to, and I know this is going to be hard for you, and I'm not trying to, but I want you to walk us through when your father contracted the virus, and how was that for you, like, going in?
Well, when we found out, it took us actually a long time, because every time I went to visit him, I then had to do my PCR twice a week, and every time I visited, do PCR plus the rapid. So it went from once every 2 weeks to once every 2 weeks, to once a week, and then towards the end it was twice a week, the PCR and then the rapid, and it took a long time for the results.
But the reason for the increase was that was because we were, like, in the height of the Omicron, right? So I guess that would be their way of securing, making sure that the resident, but in actuality, by doing that, also it also took away precious time that you could have spent with him.
So because I think the time was at the time, it was, I think, 10 days I wasn't able to go in to see him at all. They didn't even do window visits at that point. So it was either FaceTime or telephone. And again, encouraging him to say, we will see each other again. Again, they were prisoners in their room. And the other thing that I did not understand was, yes, they had to stay in their rooms. And yes, we were not allowed in. And then when they had a breakout, what was it? The outbreak, they would close the doors in that particular resident area. But why were they not allowed to even have a shower? Like they were going from one room to the end of the hall, right? So they were always basically stuck in their room, not even a shower. Like, okay, don't let me in there because we don't want to contract, but they were not able to even just go down the hall, and they wouldn't really be with anybody else that already isn't in the home.
So then I want you to look at the camera and ask public health, why weren't the residents allowed to have a shower?
Absolutely. I would love to ask if it's the health or if it's the home that decided. I don't know. But during that more than difficult time for the residents that felt like prisoners in their home, in their room, why were they not able to at least go outside, maybe in the lobby, or even just go down the hall to have a shower? Because my father was one of the residents that enjoyed his showers. He looked forward to his showers. It made him feel good and refreshed. And they were not able to take him from his room just down the hall, not encountering anybody other than the person assisting him, into a shower room to have a nice shower. That was something that really baffled my mind.
So I don't know. I guess it's about the infection control practices, protocols, or their IPAC thing. But the thing is, and I do understand what you're saying, because I oftentimes ask myself certain questions too, because I feel like then maybe what they could, like, okay, let me ask you, what if it's about IPAC and infection control, what do you think the facility could have done where like cleaning up after each residence have the shower? Could they have actually, the way how they would have had extra people cleaning down high touch point areas, could it be that they could have even had extra cleaners to disinfect
so there's the key word, extra cleaners.
Okay,
it's extra money.
So there
goes your profit, right?
And this is why we go back to the profit and non-profit organization. And then because at our facility the cleaning staff is contracted out, the laundry staff is contracted out, so that means it's a different entity. They're not under the same umbrella as we are. So think about that rationally.
But it all comes down to the almighty dollar.
It all comes down to money. So then there is something that we need to ask the government, right?
So my solution would have been, like you're talking about, I understand, even during the time where my father did not have COVID, he was not able to go take a shower. So you're saying he had COVID, how do we disinfect? They put them on those individual shower chairs, which are made of plastic. They roll them into the room and they actually take a shower on that chair. So what would be the extra effort really to clean the chair, which they need to do regardless, extra, and maybe clean the area where the shower. There's no touch point really in the shower room because it's a huge room. It's almost like my father used to joke, just bring me to the car wash and hose me down, I'll be happy. So again, in my eyes, there was a lot of things like that were not done. And to me, in my opinion, it's because it costs money. Extra cleaners cost extra money.
It boils down to who's holding whose hands, whose hands are tied, because it has to be somebody's hands are tied, because the facility, I would imagine, go follow the process or the protocol of public health, and public health is taking directions from who, and at the end of the day, would you put onus on the government? Is the government doing enough for these for profit home? Are they stepping in and making sure that everything is copacetic, so to speak?
No, they're not. They're obviously overlooked a lot of things, and because of this pandemic, the Pandora box has been open, and there are so many things that, finally we realize that this is going on. They've been talking about looking into it. Are they? I don't see too much action. They realized how much work the PSWs do, and then they said, oh, we're going to give you a little bit more money. I'm not sure if the money was taken away or whatnot. But again, is it the government that assists you with that? Then the for-profit organization also pays you. They're the ones that are paying you. What is it to pay a little bit extra during that time or any time? Because I personally feel for the amount of residents and the amount of residents that were allocated PSWs for that type of, in the floor that I saw with my dad, it wasn't enough. And they talk about in their mission statement about the importance of human connection. I felt that everything was like a production line. Go feed them, change them, wash them. Next, go feed them, change them, wash them. Next, but we don't have time to sit down and hold the resident's hand like you did from time to time when you could. And I appreciated that so much. You have no idea. That's where the human connection that they claim on their mission statement to talk about. And during the whole pandemic, because everybody was so worried about perhaps contracting COVID, that they spent as little time as they could with the residents. A lot of people, I'm sure, did not pass away from COVID. They passed away from the situation because they were basically lonely, left alone. They had they stopped all of the social events.
Yeah.
Like all of the music, all that.
Yeah,
all those things.
They aren't allowed to gather and all of these things because of, again, I guess nobody knew how this thing was spreading, or they didn't know who had, like, there are a lot of questions, no doubt, and this is why I feel like unions were calling on the government to do investigation in these for-profit homes, because I mean, I'm not the one who's saying it, but we already know that the municipal, which is the government buildings, which are the non-profit homes, not for profit, they did way better in the COVID. Their rate of infection were less than the for-profit home, and I feel like they need to look into it and see, like, really and truly, why, what is all this about, But again, it's neither here or there. You ask, and it's
shrugged off a little bit, yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. And then when it comes up to election time, then we're made a lot of like empty promises because we're dodo heads, right? We're gonna fall for what we hear. But in terms of that, and your dad going through COVID, and your dad passing away, I want you to if you don't mind, did your dad pass away from COVID?
Well, much to my surprise, the day that my father passed away, and I was there with my brothers, we were waiting on the doctor to come to finalize. It was a doctor that was on call. It was not his original doctor because she was on holidays. He had contracted COVID just after Christmas, so would we say fair enough to say the last week of December or first week of January? So, and it was very, very mild. It was just the cough. The cough kept lingering, but those were the only symptoms he had, was the lingering cough. And then they tested him again, and he didn't have COVID. But what happened was he passed away on February the 4th, and the doctor that came in, and just to basically verify that yes, he's no longer breathing, he had mentioned, yes, we will put on the death certificate that he died of COVID related. So I question that. What exactly does that mean, related? So you're basically telling me that my father died of COVID, which I disagree with. But then again, with all the rumbling and what's been going on with the media, with privatization, that a lot of these hospitals and privately owned, they do get a kickback to help them with people that are passing from COVID. So for me, again, it's my opinion. I don't really have the facts to prove that. But for me, why do you have to put that it's COVID related when in my eyes, it wasn't. It was